into the online broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing after shows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
I love it. Yeah. Thank you for tuning in to the after show for Madam Secretary, Season 1, Episode 7, Passage. I'm Sterling Cates, and joining me tonight, and hopefully for the rest of the season, April Whisenhant.
Hey guys, how are y'all? Good. Why did I say how are y'all? Whatever.
They'll respond in the comments. Yeah, exactly. Sure. So, what did you think of this episode? I thought it was, we got to see another kind of aspect of her taking on the role of Madam Secretary and going abroad. It's kind of, each week we've seen something different that kind of explains her responsibilities. And so this is just another kind of duty.
I think this was a good episode for her team, especially because she obviously got into a tough situation where she was semi-supporting this plan. You know, they're working stuff out with India, and they got her out of a really tough situation or Matt specifically did. So I think it was a good episode, especially for her team.
Yeah, and going off that, I think, and we see, so Scott is introduced, and he's a new junior speechwriter who she's brought in to kind of be under Matt, and that dynamic there is really interesting, so we'll get into that in a little bit. So it starts off with her team talking about where they want to go for their first trip abroad. And they're tossing around all the different ideas, blah, blah, blah. She comes in, and they decided on Turkey, that would be the best place for her to make an appearance. So it seems like they're pretty dead set on that. They've done all the research, whatever, but of course it has to get passed by the president. So she's, Nadine comes in and says she's summoned to Camp David, where the president is there with his chief of staff, Russell, and this Ted Graham guy who owns, is a business owner, has several different foreign international businesses that are chemical plants around the world. So they basically corner her to change her decision from Turkey to India.
He's like, it's your decision, of course, but this is Ted, and he owns this Hapanza, and basically we need some stuff worked out for him. And so you need to go there as your first trip. It would send a really great message, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, I didn't really like that much, that she was so cornered. But in previous episodes, the president has given her a lot of freeway, like a lot of flexibility with her decisions, and he chose her to be in that position because she always thinks out of the box, always has great ideas, and he kind of gives her a little more free reign to do those things. So this was the first time that he's really kind of cornered her to make that decision. Well, I think that it was bound to happen. You know, there are just some times where ultimately as a president, he's going to have to be like, I know you want to do this, but I really need you to do this, or it would really help me out. And I mean, even though obviously, you know, he has to say, it's up to you, of course, this is your trip, you know, even though he's the president, technically she still gets to choose, but, you know, is she actually going to say no? No, and that's why he did it.
And I don't think it was that important for her, you know, either way. Like, it's a huge trip for her, but going to India, you know, she's not sacrificing too much. So it's a compromise there. So she's going to bring her daughter Allison and son Jason. Stevie, the oldest daughter, is staying home because she has this hostessing job at a restaurant. She's like trying to prove herself as an adult, blah, blah, blah. And Henry, the ever so loyal husband, doesn't come. He says he's writing a book and has to search the archives. He's going to be in the library 24/7, blah, blah, blah. Can't come. I want to talk about this storyline first before we get into everything that happens in India. So it's kind of not really that surprising to me that Henry doesn't come, because he is very involved with his work and writing books, blah, blah, blah. But he also is a very supportive husband. And every episode is kind of like, oh, they're the perfect relationship.
Right. They're so cute,
like, blah, blah,
how they
yeah.
interact with one another.
Yeah, so I was a little surprised that the whole family wasn't going on the trip. But Stevie, so after Madam Secretary has left, Stevie is walking to work and sees Henry at a cafe with a younger, attractive woman.
Right.
And she sends him like a little text with a winky face. It seems like a joke at first.
Yeah.
Like, who's the babe, Dad? Like, blah, blah, blah. And the way he reacts to it, like looking around, like, where is she? Like, oh, no, I'm kind of caught.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I'm like, he is cheating on her.
Yeah.
That's what I immediately thought.
Yeah, so that's what Stevie thought, too. So do you think, so you thought, like, for sure he was cheating?
Obviously not for sure, but, you know, just we were saying while we were watching it, we're like, they're so perfect and sweet together. You know, they seem like they have just, like, a great marriage. And it's all in the way he reacted, which obviously we learn later. There's a reason why he did that.
Right.
But, you know, we're not thinking that way. He reacts, he looks around like, where is she? You know, why is she sending me this text?
Right, like he's been caught.
And so I'm like, ugh. There's a crack in the perfectness.
I know. Exactly. I was thinking it was bound to happen that we have some sort of obstacle with the marriage, because it has been almost too perfect. And for TV, there's never a perfect relationship, but it kind of turns out that this one is.
Of course.
But anyway, so throughout the episode, Daisy and Matt, who are on Madam Secretary's staff. Matt has to stay back because the reason is that his passport wouldn't be ready in time because he had some speeding ticket or something. So that was the excuse that he couldn't go to India with the rest of the team. And Daisy stays back as well. But they go out for a drink. First of all, let's talk about them for a second.
Yeah.
Their little affair that's happening, kind of affair that's not really an affair. So when it started, when we found out about it a couple episodes ago, Matt had a girlfriend and Daisy has Wynn,
right?
Who she's still with, but he broke up with his girlfriend, because he obviously has strong feelings for Daisy,
right?
But she stayed with Wynn. She sees a future with him. I think it's more of a safe choice for her, right? But to me, they just don't have that connection. Like I don't see the chemistry when they're talking and that sort of stuff, at least physically. I mean, they have witty dialogue and that sort of stuff.
They have like a good banter with one another, but it's like I'm not rooting for them to be together because they just don't. And I think that is, you know, not to say that they're not great actors. They both are. They're great. But I think maybe just like their connection with each other isn't. Or not necessarily
I don't know if that's a casting thing. Yeah, it could be. But at the end, because she doesn't seem like she's all in for her and Matt. She's definitely very interested in Wynn and wants that future with him. It's talking about the wedding, blah, 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 that she's going to with him. And she's a bridesmaid in his sister's wedding. So it's obviously very serious. Right. But he comes to her apartment at the end, but they're to basically just tell her all of his feelings and let's be together. I want to do this. Let's be serious about this. But then she says that Wynn proposed and she said yes, and she's just like, I feel bad for you. I'm sorry. Yeah. Which I thought was kind of rude.
I did too. She's like, oh, I just feel bad for you because I'm happy. But, you know, that's actually the first moment that I kind of saw like some semblance of chemistry. Right. Because, you know, and it was actually after he walked off because you could clearly tell that he was upset, obviously. But, you know, she did a great job of portraying like like
she's
somewhat
torn,
of a longing
like she's
feeling.
not sure, right?
Yeah, so I definitely saw or like sensed a little chemistry there, but I feel like it's not really gonna go anywhere. I mean, I don't know if things are gonna work out with her and Wynn because she obviously did cheat on him and didn't necessarily feel too bad about it. She's just like, it can't happen, whatever. Or she hasn't said that she does anyway. Right. But I don't know. They're an interesting little matchup.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how this plays out and if they'll end up together, blah, blah. We can talk about that in predictions.
Yeah.
But during the episode, Matt and Daisy are out, and she's basically breaking up with them. Like, this can never happen. Tomorrow I'm leaving on this trip, and after this, that's it, blah, blah, blah. When they spot Stevie, the oldest daughter, who is also underage, basically just wasted at the bar by herself, not even with anyone. And Daisy goes and helps her, blah, blah, and Stevie basically confesses everything, that her dad's cheating on Elizabeth and that he is such a liar, blah, blah, blah.
She very much so, which obviously, because her dad didn't you know, negate anything from that story, but she jumped to conclusions so fast. I mean, there's only so much you can think when you see your dad with a young woman, and he's like, and you could, I mean, it was clear that he was lying. And then she, you know, she talked about how she talked to the people who worked at the archives, and they're like, oh, tell him we miss him. And, you know, that's what he said he's been doing. He's been at the archives every day, but then she learns he hasn't been. So I get where she would think that, but I don't know. It's almost like, is it that easy? Like, you're just gonna, oh, he's cheating. Like, you don't think of any other explanation?
Because he is the most supportive and honest, and he's there all the time for the kids, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't think that should have been the first thing she assumed about it. And they do have a really open relationship, so the fact that she just shut him out automatically was very surprising to me. But I guess I needed to do that to make it a little more believable. But he's never shown any signs that he's been unfaithful by any means. But regardless, she decides to tell Daisy all of this information.
I thought, whenever she was telling her that, I'm like, someone is going to be listening and it's going to get
to the press.
But obviously that didn't happen. But I'm like, why are you telling her this right now? This is like some top secret info. Do not share this in the middle of a bar while you're drunk eating a grilled cheese.
Yeah. And I also felt like if your parents have a history of being in the CIA, I was about to say CSI. I was like, that's not it. That's not it. But your parents have a history of being involved with politics, blah, blah, blah.
And secretive organizations.
Right. They're very secretive, you know, stuff that's not released to the public. So, A, you shouldn't be wasted underage, just pretty much telling anybody about what's going on. Or B, so quick to jump to conclusions, because it very well may be that something else is going on there.
Maybe it'll be lesson learned for her.
Yeah. But what did you think about when Daisy confronted Elizabeth, Madam Secretary, about, hey, like, I have a very close source that says your husband's having an affair. We need to figure out how to contain this issue.
Yeah. I think she approached it from a little bit of like a too hard for the yard kind of stance, if that makes sense. But obviously they're not super close. You know, it's still a new thing. You know, I feel like later the relationships will form more where that wouldn't be such a weird thing for her to say, but she just approached it from too much of a business-like stance. But then again, she doesn't have a like super personal relationship with Madam Secretary yet. So I mean, but she shut it down real quick, and she's like, I don't know about you and Matt, so don't project whatever you're feeling onto me. But clearly she thought something of it, because she goes and picks up the phone and calls him immediately. But I thought that Daisy just kind of approached it the wrong way.
It was an interesting approach, but at the end of the day, she is head of all the PR and press and handling the press and handling questions like that. But I found it interesting that she didn't mention that it was her daughter who said something, because that is completely different than some anonymous press source. You know, because it's closer to home. It could potentially be more true then. And that is a very serious issue that wouldn't need to be in the press.
I thought she didn't say it because she was trying to protect Stevie and not tell her mom that she was drunk at a bar. And so that's why I thought she did it. But then we learned that she did, in fact, tell Elizabeth her.
But I think it was later. I think it was later when she went to apologize that they had that conversation. But yeah, I don't know. I think Elizabeth had every right to know that her daughter was drunk in a bar underage.
100%.
Yeah,
she should know because
and saying this thing about the husband. But it turns out, so the thing I love most about their relationship is that with Henry and Elizabeth is that they are so honest, and that's why we've always loved their relationship. Is because it's like, wow, that's so open. They talk about everything to the extent that they can because they both have, you know, jobs that don't really allow you to.
But I'm like, is it, obviously it's very serious, of course, but I'm like, I still would want my husband to tell me, which he tells her a little bit, but I don't know.
Yeah, but she confronts him and it's like, okay, I need to hear from you. I know this isn't true, but are you having an affair? And he, at first, he doesn't deny it. She's like, okay, I'm gonna need a little more confirmation that that's a no, a solid no. But turns out the NSA has enlisted him for a project that he's done in the past. And he's the only person for the job because he can walk up to this person that he needs to connect with because he's a professor of religion and author, blah, blah, blah. So he has the credentials for it to be realistic.
Right.
So he's going to do it, and that's great, but he can't tell anyone, especially the daughter who has proven to go around and talk about it.
She's like, oh, don't worry about that. My dad's working for the NSA again.
Yeah.
Like, okay, no.
Yeah. But so at the end of the episode, because Elizabeth obviously would never believe that he's having an affair. She knows him too well. They have too great of a relationship. They're too honest with each other. And Elizabeth ends up talking to Stevie about this, and she's just like, all right, you're grounded, A, for being drunk in a bar, but your dad's not having an affair, but we don't owe you an explanation just because these are how our jobs are.
I like that she said that. I like that she said you are entitled to your own judgments, but not to an explanation.
Right.
And because I kind of wondered how she was going to put it. Like, you know, she has to tell her something. If she's just going to say your dad's not cheating, she's going to be like, well, yes, he is.
Yeah.
You know, so I liked how she put it. She made it very clear that it was, I feel like she made it clear that it was something work related or just something that she couldn't talk to her about.
Yeah.
So therefore that made her kind of a little more understanding. I also liked how she said when she was like talking about Stevie being an adult, or she's like, that's not fair, I'm grounded for 2 weeks, and she's like, well, I guess that's why most 20-year-olds don't live with their parents.
Exactly. Like, so she dropped out of college, came to move back home, is now trying to figure it out. So she can't say, I'm an adult, you can't tell me what to do. No, you are living at home with your parents, like, if you're under their roof, they still have...
Classic mom line. My mom tells me that all the time. She's like, if you're living under my roof, I'm like, whatever. Or she did tell me that whenever I lived at home, I guess.
Right, exactly. You can't really argue with that at all. Okay, so let's move away from that and go into the whole India thing, because this is the meat of it here. So they go to India. Allison and Jason are there, the kids.
Right.
And she gives this... first the earthquake happens first at it was like at some luncheon or whatever.
Right.
This massive earthquake hits, but before that, Allison, the daughter, had been making some eyes, giving the eyes,
flirty eyes
with the Sanjay boy. Is it Sanjay? Sanjay? I don't know, something like that. I was reading the captions. I wasn't really listening.
I'm like, what's the name?
I think it's Sanjay is the correct one. But anyways, he asks her if she's ever seen a peacock before, and then they go off on a walk.
What an interesting pickup line. Her brother said it best. He's like, what? No, have you ever seen a peacock before? I would have been like, no, you're cute, let's go.
Yeah, well, they do go.
Yeah.
And right when they leave, the earthquake hits, and it turns out to be this huge earthquake that he said is a 7.3 that collapsed a hospital and a school and had already killed a bunch of people.
Right.
So it was a huge deal. But the most stressful part for Madam Secretary at the time is that her daughter is off gallivanting with this boy, and they're separated during the thing. But Secret Service makes sure that her and Jason are taken care of, and they're out looking for... They won't let her go try to find her daughter.
Right.
But eventually they're reunited. It's all good. But it really affects Allison.
Yeah.
Even, she's... has developed feelings for this Sanjay very fast.
Must have been quite the peacock.
Well, we learned that his whole house was destroyed and his family has been displaced, and so I think that affects her a lot because she just got to get on the next plane home.
Right. Was he not like a member of like the prime minister's family or someone's family?
I'm not sure, but he was at that event, so he had to be someone's connected. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't. Not that really matters, but yeah, she's definitely super affected by it and just can't get over the fact that she just gets to go home back to her house and everything's so devastated back where he is.
Yeah.
Which, you know, it shows a little bit of like, I'm not sure how old she is. I feel like she's in the
she's probably middle school.
Right?
Yeah, she was having sleepovers and stuff recently, so I feel like probably middle school.
Yeah, but she's a mature, like, young lady. The fact that you know, a lot of people can't really place like real emotions on that sort of thing because you just kind of, you know, it's like an out-of-body experience. Right. But yeah, she's definitely affected by it. For sure.
It is really traumatizing. But Jason doesn't seem to be so affected by it. He's even younger than she is. But but after that, then. So you already have this like huge disaster happening while she's there, but then on top of that, the next event she does is she gives a speech at the company. What is it?
No, she did that first.
She did the speech first?
She did the speech at the Hapanza plant first.
Okay.
And then they went to the lunch
after. And then they did the lunch and the reception, whatever. But then it comes out later that the speech that she just gave, basically praising this chemical plant, but Hapanza is owned by a private company, but it's an American company.
Right. It's owned
in India.
Ted Graham.
It's owned by Ted Graham, right, but it's not owned by the American government. It's just a private company that happens to be American. But anyway, so Blake reveals the news that this chemical plant during the earthquake had leaked a toxic chemical that caused a blast and this huge fire that is at the time had already killed 4,000 people.
Yeah.
And it was just only going to expand from there. So
right, and it was flowing into the Ganges and everything.
Right. So this huge disaster is happening as a result to the earthquake. And so now kind of there's a struggle between everyone's pointing fingers at everyone. It's the private event. It's the private company's fault. It's America's fault. It's India's fault. Blah blah. But the truth is that
it's no one's fault.
It's no one's fault because the plant met all the standards for India.
Right.
It was still lower than American standards, but it met India standards.
Right.
So if that plant had been in America, it wouldn't have met the standards.
Basically, they were all at fault somewhat. Because, you know, the owner could have paid just the $200,000 more to bring it up to that higher standard.
Right.
But also it's semi-India's fault because they have their standards so low or not so low, but lower because it's cheaper.
Right.
But the whole point of the episode, the whole reason why she's going to India as well is because they want to, you know, work on foreign investments and that sort of thing.
Totally.
So this is literally just kind of putting a shot in that whole entire plan. So that's why she just has to work something out. And we see the struggle between her and I forget her name, the lady who she was meeting with from India.
I can't remember.
But you know, she's like, how can we work this out? We're going to send in these hot shots, which are the guys from the firefighters from Texas who are the best. And she, the lady, she refuses. She says they can't accept foreign aid.
Yeah,
because they need someone to take the blame because it's looking like India at this point, and they're not wanting to do that. They're wanting America and Hapanza to take the blame, but Madam Secretary says they can't because it's a private company and we're a democracy. You can't force anyone to take blame for something whatsoever.
And Ted Graham doesn't want to take responsibility for it because the company met the standards. That they needed to. So it really isn't his fault, and he shouldn't have to, you know, publicly take the blame, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, and what I love so much about Madam Secretary is that she isn't really politically driven. She doesn't have ambition to be the president, blah, blah. She's taking her role very seriously, and from more of a moral standpoint. She's like, okay, I don't really care who gets the blame for this, but I just want this, I want people to stop dying. I want this fire to be put out. Like, however we need to do this, we've got to do it.
Right. I think that's part of what makes Daisy's job so tough for her sometimes, is because since Madam Secretary is so
not traditional.
Yeah, and she's so like, I just want the right thing to happen. I don't care what I look like in this moment. Like, obviously, we're going to have to figure this out, but this is number one right now.
Exactly.
And it's kind of tough because she's the PR person. You know, that's her job, is to be there and to say, this is what we're dealing with. Like, even though this happened, you look good because you're seen helping these people out. You know,
she's like, I don't want to hear that right now.
Right.
That's not my biggest concern, is how I look in the media. But Matt kind of takes this opportunity to step up to the plate, because they had, he brought up the whole passport thing, and he was like, I don't think Scott, is qualified. He hasn't gotten any of his speeches vetted by me, blah, blah, blah. And she takes him aside and is like, listen, so Marsh, the Secretary of State before she was, Matt was one of his guys.
Right.
So he was on his team, and he hasn't really been stepping up to the plate since she came in office. And she knows what he's capable of, but he's not doing any of that.
Right.
So she said, look, I intentionally, do you really think I couldn't get your passport cleared?
Right.
Like, I'm the Secretary of State. What are you thinking?
Yeah.
And she admits that it was a test for Scott to see if he could step up and see what he is capable of. So Matt kind of takes that as like, all right, I'm going to stop being lazy, going to figure this out. So he takes this opportunity with this chemicals leak, fire thing.
A little bit of it all.
And he comes up with a solution, and he writes a speech that's an apology where she's kind of taking the blame for this whole thing, saying, I should have looked into the plant before I went there to see if it met with American standards, because and she explained the whole thing about how the standards are different for the countries. So really, she's taking the blame, but also she's blaming the company, and she's also blaming America and India. So she's blaming everyone, but she's saying, but it's my fault. I want to take responsibility.
She's saying that, and she's saying basically all of our standards should be higher. So she is kind of, sitting on the knife, like they put it, but she's also she's like, it is my fault because I should have looked into what this was, but it should be different. So therefore, she's dispersing the blame a little bit, kind of putting the pressure on India to say, like, because at that point, if we're taking, somewhat of the blame, then it looks, I mean, what are they going to do? They're not going to accept our help, and those are the best people in the world, really, to put out put the fire out. And I think it was awesome that she didn't, because ultimately everyone knows that, the president is the leader of the free world. Technically, it all comes back to him.
Right.
And I think it was good for her that she didn't kind of put any blame on him. Like, he made me go here. He made me talk to this person, because I think that'll definitely help their relationship.
Yeah. And he was definitely pleased with how it was handled, because he was like, I didn't feel the wheels of this at all.
Right.
So he definitely appreciated that he wasn't involved in it at all. But also, she didn't really get a lot of credit for this, but Daisy stepped up here at the end with the hashtag Bring the Cowboys to the Indians.
Oh, yeah, that was amazing.
Because it was, if people in India are wanting what were they called? The hot shots.
Right.
The Texas hot shots to come put out the fire, that's the only way they were going to get there. Americans couldn't send them. America couldn't send them. So at the end of the day, they kind of made India request that they come, and then they got the situation contained with the trending hashtag and making it a huge thing. So that was all resolved.
Isn't that crazy? A hashtag can do that these days.
Yeah, it's really crazy.
We didn't even have hashtags 5 years ago. What would we do?
I know, right? Well, all the citizens were demanding this of their government, and the government listened, and so it made it seem like bringing these hot shots was their idea, when really it was
our idea.
Yeah, it was, but again, Madam Secretary doesn't care whose idea it is. She just wants to get everything.
Saved.
She doesn't want the credit for anything, which is, I find in politics so rare.
It's a very endearing quality, and makes her character that much more likable.
Right.
Because she actually seems to really care.
Yeah, I know. All right. Well, that's pretty much, so we talked about the affair, we talked about India. It's pretty much wraps up this episode.
Yeah.
Should we get into predictions?
Yeah.
And now, your AFTERBUZZ TV predictions.
All right.
I'm trying to think here.
I predict some sort of crack at some point in the marriage.
There's got to be something, right?
I don't, you know, it's almost easy to say, like, there's got to be something, because just like you said, there's always something.
Yeah.
But I feel like not necessarily a crack like an affair or anything like that, but maybe just the stress of their jobs and how much, like, if he is going to be working with the NSA a lot more, plus writing a book, plus she's secretary, you know, like,
yeah.
I feel like their schedules, it's going to cause maybe like a little tension with how busy they'll both be. And I also predict some turmoil with Stevie, because she seems like she's going to be going through some stuff. You know?
I know, yeah. I feel like she's kind of lost right now, trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life, and she's in the shadow of her mom's job, and basically trapped in the house if she can't do anything, and she's grounded. So I don't know. I want to predict that Daisy won't marry Wynn, and that there's more to her and Matt than,
I like that.
I don't think this was it for them.
I don't think so either. She looked there was too much longing in her eyes for it to be over.
Yeah. And I think, while we're talking about Matt, I think he really proved himself at the end of this by stepping up, and he seems to be really more, he seems to, like, something clicked for him when she talked to him about, you know, stepping up to the plate and reaching his potential that she knows he has.
For sure.
But yeah, we'll continue to see, because each episode's a different responsibility that she has for being Secretary of State. So I guess we'll see more of that, and yeah,
we'll see.
There we go.
To be continued.
So I still want to know about Nadine, because Nadine is her chief of staff with the brown curly hair. And she's not sure if she's loyal yet or not. So I'm curious to see about that as
Nadine, we'll see.
All right. April, where can the people find you?
Y'all can find me on Twitter and Instagram at April Whisenhant.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Sterling Cates. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.